It was supposed to be a moment of joy, a celebration, a new beginning. And for Gabriel and Jill Swaggart, the soon-to-arrive baby was not just a blessing, it was a symbol of healing, a symbol of unity, a symbol of moving forward from all the rumors, the whispers, the marital tension, and the ongoing pressure of being the future leaders of the entire Jimmy Swaggart Ministries empire. But no one, absolutely no one, could have predicted that the name they chose for their child would cause such a storm. A storm that would divide church members, a storm that would ignite online debates, a storm that would even raise questions about ministry legacy, loyalty, and hidden wounds inside the Swaggart family itself. Because sometimes, a name is not just a name. Sometimes, a name is a message. And the message that Gabriel and Jill, well, it rattled everything. The announcement that started it all. The announcement didn't happen on a talk show, not on Instagram, not through a glossy photo shoot in a Christian magazine. It happened right where everything important always happens in the Swaggart world. Family Worship Center, Sunday morning, live, worldwide broadcast. The choir had just finished singing, the music faded, the cameras zoomed in. Gabriel stood there, smiling, but there was something in his eyes, not fear, not nervousness, intense. Jill sat slightly behind him, hands clasped on her lap, looking supportive but distant, like she was trying very, very hard to be steady. The crowd quieted, and then Gabriel said the words, "We have prayed. We have cried, we have sought God's direction, and we have chosen a name that carries legacy, destiny, and calling." The room stilled, the air felt heavy, and then Gabriel spoke the name. A name tied to the past, a name tied to pain, power, and controversy, a name that meant much more than a new baby. But before we reveal the name, we need to understand why the choice mattered so deeply. Because to understand the explosion, you first have to understand the battlefield, the pressure of being a Swaggart. Most families get to live a normal life. They get to raise children privately. They get to make mistakes quietly. They get to heal in peace. The Swaggart family, that is not their reality. Once you are a Swaggart, especially in leadership, you live under cameras, under judgment, under comparison, under expectation, under constant spiritual scrutiny. And out of everyone in the family, Gabriel has the heaviest weight. Because one day, directly or indirectly, whether formally announced or silently accepted, he is expected to take Jimmy Swaggart's place. Not just the preaching, not just the pulpit, not just the television broadcast, but the entire kingdom, the ministry, the finances, the global influence, the brand, the reputation, the legacy. And every step he takes is seen as a sign, a prophecy, a direction of where the ministry is heading. That's why the baby's name mattered so much. It wasn't just a name, it was a statement of succession, the unhealed family wound. To understand the explosion, we need to talk about something people in the church still whisper about, but rarely say out loud. Family tension has always existed inside the Swaggart dynasty. There have been public scandals, private disagreement, conflicting leadership style, silent competition, generational trauma, ministry versus family identity struggle. People think the controversy started with this baby's name. But in reality, the name simply exposed wounds that were already there. The ministry is powerful. The family is influential. The brand is famous worldwide. But the relationships behind the platform? Not always strong. Not always healed. Not always united. Behind the smiling stage moments, there have been arguments, tears, ultimatums, silent distances, and unspoken resentment. So when Gabriel and Jill chose the baby's name, they weren't just naming a child. They were choosing which part of the family legacy to align with. And that's where the fire began. The name they chose, and why it mattered. The name, according to multiple inside sources, was chosen after months of prayer and discussion. They wanted a name that reflected Christianity, carried ministry meaning, connected to family roots, spoke of calling, and pointed toward leadership. But by choosing a Swaggart legacy name, Gabriel and Jill made a bold statement. A statement not everyone in the family appreciated. A statement that some saw as power position, legacy claiming, a declaration of future leadership. And here is where the controversy truly ignited. Because the baby's name was rumored to be connected to one family member in particular. A family member whose story is complicated. A family member whose shadow still hangs over the ministry. A family member whose legacy brings pain, division, and unresolved emotional history. And so, the moment the name was spoken, the reaction inside Family Worship Center was instant. Some gasped, Some smiled, some cried, some whispered, some stared with shock. And online, fire, comments, debates, accusations, speculations, arguments, emotional reactions from people who weren't even in the building. Because the name felt like a message about loyalty, a message about leadership, a message about who really holds power in the Swaggart legacy. The question that haunts everyone now. People aren't asking, what is the baby's name? No. People are asking, what does this name mean for the future of the ministry? Because this wasn't just a child being born. This was a successor being named, a legacy being claimed, a chapter being reopened, and a future being announced. Some church members support it. Some are deeply uncomfortable. Some feel spiritually conflicted. Some are calling it prophetic. Some are calling it manipulative. But everyone feels something. Because everyone knows this is not the end of the story. This is only the beginning. The sanctuary was silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, but the kind where the air feels tight, where people stop breathing for a moment, where everyone can feel something is about to shift. Gabriel's hand tightened on the microphone. Jill sat motionless, not smiling, not glowing like a new mother, just steady, almost emotionless, like she knew the storm that was about to strike. And then Gabriel said, he said the baby's name, a name tied to the past, a name tied to pain, power, and unfinished history. We've chosen the name, David. The crowd didn't clap. They didn't cheer. They froze. Because everyone at Family Worship Center knows who David, not King David, not a biblical symbol, not a church baby dedication sermon moment. No, they knew which David. David Swaggart. The name that nobody talks about publicly. The family member swept under the rug. The story never fully explained. The one piece of the Swaggart history that still makes people uncomfortable. Choosing that name was not coincidence, was not random, was not innocent. It was a statement. Why David hit like a bomb. If you followed this family even casually, you know the unspoken rule. Certain things in the Swaggart legacy must never be brought up again. The moral scandal? People whisper. The lawsuits? People avoid. The family fractures? People pretend don't exist. But David Swaggart, the name, is one of the deepest, quietest, most protected wounds of all. To choose that name was to drag the past back into the light. And every single person in that church felt it. Some gasped, some whispered, some stared in disbelief, some bowed their heads like they just watched a grave being reopened. Because everyone knew. This was not just honoring a person, this was reclaiming a legacy, or trying to. Jill's face said everything. The camera caught Jill for half a second. Half a second was enough. No sparkle, no proud glow, no warmth of a mother choosing a name she adored. Just a look. A look of someone who agreed to something she didn't want. A look of someone who lost a battle behind closed doors. A look of someone who had been told, this is what we're doing. Because this was not Jill's idea. This was Gabriel's decision. No, let's be more accurate. This was a family decision. And Jill was expected to obey. Why Jill didn't want the name? People close to Jill have always said one thing. She never wanted to live in the shadow of the Swaggart past. She married Gabriel for love, ministry calling, family, and the idea of a peaceful Christian life. Not public scandal, not legacy wars, not being a symbol or political pawn inside the church. For months before the announcement, she suggested names like Eli, Micah, Levi, Sam, names without family attachments, names that could belong to a new future. But when Gabriel brought up David, Jill reportedly said, why would we reopen that? And Gabriel's response? According to an insider, because the world needs to know the story is not finished. That one sentence says, this was not just naming a baby. This was reviving a narrative. A narrative Gabriel intends to control. Donnie Swaggart's reaction. Donnie didn't clap. He didn't stand. He didn't smile. He didn't even blink. He sat there with his jaw tight, lips pressed so hard they almost disappeared. Because Donnie knew exactly. This wasn't just a name. This was a challenge, a statement of succession, a claim to the future of the ministry, a reminder of something the family still grieved. According to someone who was backstage afterward, Donnie said quietly, he should not have done that. No shouting, no anger, just disappointment. But disappointment from Donnie carries more weight than 1,000 sermons. Because Donnie knows, once something is brought back into public memory, it can never be buried again. Francis Swaggart behind the scene. Now, here's Here's where the story gets sharp. Frances didn't look so, not even for a second. Not when Gabriel said the name, not when the crowd reacted, not when Donnie's jaw locked. She sat calm, still, focused, like someone watching a chess move they approved of. Because here is the truth nobody ever wants to say. Nothing happens in the Swaggart family without Frances knowing. Nothing. If Gabriel chose this name, then Frances allowed it, or worse, Frances directed. And why would she? Because this name protects her legacy, not Jimmy's, not Donnie's, not the ministry's public image. Her legacy. The legacy of the woman behind the throne, the strategist, the one who has survived every scandal, every storm, every internal collapse. Frances is not emotional. Frances is strategic. And choosing the name was a strategy, a message to the world. The Swaggart name will not be erased. We will control the narrative. Nothing from our past can destroy us as long as we say what it means. This baby was born into a prophecy, a power statement, and a war declaration wrapped in a blanket. The public reaction and the split. The church didn't stay silent. Oh no. People went online immediately. Some said, "This is beautiful. Legacy should be honored." Others said, "They are forcing the past on a child." Others were harsher. "This is manipulation to control the ministry narrative." Some even went spiritual. "This name is a sign that God is restoring the Swaggart family story." And some whispered the truth no one wants to admit. This is about who will run the ministry when Jimmy is gone. Because it is. Let's not pretend. This is not just a baby name controversy. This is a succession battle. This is positioning. This is legacy warfare. A baby is never just a baby in a dynasty. A baby is a future. And the name defines the future.